When should the New Orleans Saints address the cornerback issue? Ladies and gentlemen, New Orleans.football is the backdrop. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about cornerback in the NFL. We're going to have a bit of a philosophical discussion. I've mentioned this a few times in a few different videos and even on a few radio spots or whatnot, but I really want to dig into this, all right? I really want to dig into how I see the position and we're going to talk about some things like base rate, some numerical data, maybe even bring in. So kick back, enjoy yourself on a Friday. Okay, so a lot of people have said, well, let's take a cornerback at 9, all right? And my response to that is, you are taking the least valued position and the most volatile position at a spot where you need to extract the most value, okay? Let's just look at cornerback just in the NFL. Why do I say it's the least valuable position? Because I believe in today's NFL, it is, and we're taking away kickers and punters and whatever, but it is one of the least valuable because of what they are asked to do in the current landscape of the NFL. Think about a cornerback, right? Think about a defense. What do most defenses do nowadays? They sit in a too high shell. They play kind of a softer zone. Why? Why do they do that? One, to take away the deep ball. Okay, they do not want to get gouged anymore with deep threats, so they're protecting against the deep threats, and they're allowing that short to intermediate kind of chunk yardage, and they're hoping to just kind of bend, not break. All right, we're seeing a lot of that. Also, the position has changed with the rules of the NFL. The rules of the NFL have made it to where defenders virtually can't do anything. Like the idea of just a man cornerback locking down a receiver, physical, getting in his face, just blanketing him, that's not really a thing anymore because of penalties and defensive holding and pass interference and how this all happens. So the idea of the number one lockdown, Darrelle Revis, Champ Bailey, the idea of that cornerback, even the idea of Marshawn Lattimore, even that idea doesn't really exist. And teams don't really need to have it. Now, certainly, you will have standout receivers or cornerbacks. Certainly, you will have the best players at the position. But on a whole, you are not asking the average cornerback to do much more than the best cornerback. All right, let's take a look, too, at this. So, this is the highest graded players in 2024 from Pro Football Focus. This is the top 10. Now, real quick, what do you notice? So Lamar Jackson, 94.9, Derrick Henry, 94.2, Puka Nacua, 92.5, George Kittle, 92.1, Jordan Mailata, 95.1, Chris Lindstrom, 93.5, Eric McCoy, 94.2, Chris Jones, 90.2, Aiden Hutchinson, 94.9, Zach Bond, 91, Kirby Joseph, safety, 90.4, cornerback Cooper DeJean, 86.3. What do you notice? You notice that the top end for cornerbacks is much lower, okay? The best cornerback was an 86.3, whereas, the best quarterback was a 94.9 and so on and so forth. Why is that? Okay? Because the position is the most volatile position on the field. It is a per play position, and the best cornerback in the NFL can get absolutely roasted multiple times a game. We see it all the time, okay? We never see a quarterback drop back and they just forget how to throw a football, and they just completely whiff. They don't even know how to do the mechanic, all right? The consistency with the cornerback is very low, okay? So for those two reasons, I don't think you should take cornerbacks in the first round. I think you should remove them. Get effing rid of them at 9. If we were picking at 19, if we're picking at 20, okay, sure, right? But in that top 10, you do not take a cornerback, all right? I think they should address it. We have the big board pulled up. Siobhan Revell, the hombre out of ECU, perfect. Okay, 6'3", 193, had an 84 season grade last year, which was better than Will Johnson. Okay, better than Will Johnson's last 2 seasons, by the way. Okay, so I understand it's at ECU, but all good with this. Would Siobhan Ravel's impact be that much lesser than Will Johnson's? I say no. So I would much rather them target someone here or even here, Azariah Thomas, at 70, okay, than at 9.
First segment presented by Shawberry Insurance, the Earhart Agency. Nick, when should the Saints address the cornerback problem? Because, you have Alontae Taylor in here, you have Kool-Aid McKinstry in here, but after that, it gets kind of shaky a little bit. So when should they address that in the draft?
I feel like there's a good opportunity at 40, I think, to take care of that position if you don't feel great about the options that you have available to you at the 9th pick. Will Johnson will obviously be there, and I think he's a good player. I think he's somebody that should be on the list. But then you have Amos from Mississippi. I think that could possibly be there at 40. Hairston, Mel Kiper had him, the guy from Kentucky, going at the end of the first round. I'm not really sure what the range is there, but it's feasible that he could possibly be there. But I think Siobhan Ravel, the corner from East Carolina, I think he has a chance of being there at 40, and I think he can really, really play. I did a mock draft yesterday, and I wasn't super familiar with what he can do, but then I took a look back at him after I did that. I'd watched him a little bit as a cursory glance, and I just kind of realized my knowledge wasn't quite all the way there. And I spent some time yesterday watching him. I think he's a really good player. He's 6'2", got really good size. He can run. He's really, really fast. He can play some press. I like him. I like a lot of the stuff that he can do. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some learning curve there coming from a smaller college, but I think he's a real option at 40. And I feel like if you got him or Amos at 40, I would feel pretty decent about that position going forward.
Yeah, you referenced your mock draft from yesterday in the Nick cast, which you can only catch if you're a New Orleans Football member. You went through a mock kind of.
Hey, New Orleans Football. Listen, I'll give you a free one, okay? This is a free one from the face of the franchise, straight off the dome, okay? By the way, I know we've been talking about merch. I'm talking with some high-level creative designers, some creative people back there. One of the things that we've been throwing around, I'll give you a little sneak peek, okay? Catchphrase. How about this? Straight from the dome. Unbelievable. Unbelievable what the team is doing. But anyways, I'll give New Orleans Football this one for free. The Nickcast, it should be... Now get ready. Hear me out. The Nickcast should be rebranded Nick at Night. Did you think the screen froze? It didn't. Boom. Come on. Nick at Night. Make it happen. That's a free one from the face of the franchise.
What were some of your thoughts about, kind of reflecting over it now? What are some of your thoughts about some of your picks in there?
It's tough to get everything you want out of this draft. You aren't going to get through those first 2 days of picks, day one, day two of those picks, those first 3 rounds, and feel great about it. Even throwing the 4th in there, there's going to be something that's missing because there's just too many needs. I think I went tight end, corner. I took an offensive tackle. I got the running back, and I got a quarterback in those first 5 picks, which means I didn't get a safety, I didn't get a pass rusher, I didn't get a defensive tackle. I didn't, I got a wide receiver. I'm sorry, I got the wide receiver in those picks. I took Trey Harris.
Ole Miss. That's something else you got to remember with draft philosophy, okay? The worst thing you can do is treat it like a grocery shopping list where you're like, all right, I need a cornerback, need a wide receiver, need a safety, need a tight end, because then you limit yourself way too much with your picks. You have to let the board fall to you to a certain extent and then say, okay, out of everything that I need and what's available, what is the best value for me? How do I extract the most value? Now, I'm going to do this really quick, and we're 10 minutes in the video, so it's not that big of a deal. But a good way for you to kind of think about value and extracting value is you have to have a base rate. Okay, a base rate is a statistical benchmark for what you are expecting the player to deliver. All right, you have to have that base rate, that statistical benchmark, in order to determine the value of the player. If you're just blindly picking players and being like, oh, this guy can be a number one wide receiver, this guy can be a number one running back, this guy can be a franchise quarterback, this guy can be what, like, it's not going to work. It is not going to work at all. All right, if you do a fantasy baseball draft, it's like a lot of the times you're drafting players and your thought process is, okay, this guy can give me, 20 home runs and 81 RBIs. And that's it. And that's your statistical benchmark. That's your base rate. Could he be higher? Could he be lower? Sure. Are there standard deviations to that? Absolutely. But you got to have that benchmark. So what could be a benchmark for a cornerback? Now, this is back of the napkin AF math. Okay, we're doing this real quick, real easy. You could spend 10 hours building out a model. So you could say a statistical benchmark would be Paulson Adebo. All right, Paulson Adebo was on the Saints last year. He left / got paid. So you have to fill his position. Okay. Now, it would be dumb to say, well, we need to draft a number one lockdown best cornerback in the NFL, because that's not what Paulson Adebo is. That's not your statistical benchmark. That's a horrible base rate. What is your odds of doing that, right? You're not going to do that. So let's look at Paulson Adebo. Does anyone want to guess where Paulson Adebo falls on last year's PFF coverage grade? Let's take a look, and I'll use Control F so people could scream at me in the comment section. 82nd. Okay? 82nd. He had a 63.9. Now, I understand it is a small amount of games because of his injury, but that's what you're filling. Okay? That is what you're filling. You could go back and average out throughout his career, however you want to do it. All right? How about this? Kind of interesting. Kind of what I'm talking about with the volatility of cornerbacks, but the boy Paulson is 82nd. Would you believe that Rico Payton was actually better? Now, it was only in 4 games compared to 7 games, but, it is what it is. So Rico Payton was actually better in his time than Paulson Adebo. Kind of interesting. I'm not sure a lot of people would believe that. Real quick, if you look at New Orleans, number 1 cornerback was Kool-Aid McKinstry with a 67.1. All right. Then you had Rico Payton. Then you had Paulson Adebo. Okay. Just stuff to think about. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Is Lante on here? Good God Almighty, he was not. Okay, he was 35.4 coverage grade, which is basically, I think, what I got. So a safe statistical benchmark, a base rate, would be in the 70s. You could say somewhere in this neighborhood. You're looking, that's your statistical benchmark. Your base rate would be somewhere in that 65 to 75. Okay, that's your statistical expectations. So then you look at the board. Do you believe you can reach that base rate with Siobhan Ravel, with Max Harrison, with Azariah Thomas, with whoever you think it could be? And that's how you approach a draft. That's how you do it. Now, there's a lot more that goes into it. Again, that was 40 seconds, but there you go.
Not the running back. So yeah, didn't get the running back. I mean, there's just going to be something that you're not getting, especially if you try to take a quarterback within those picks. And I think that's the most interesting position for the team overall, is what they're going to do about quarterback. There's obviously a ton of noise out there. Everybody's talking about Shedeur at 9. Me personally, if you take all the evaluation, everything out of it, and you're just going, who do you want to watch out of anybody on this draft next year? Give me him. Like, put him on the team. I think he's the most exciting prospect, just in terms of wanting to show up every day and see what he does, wanting to show up every Sunday at the Superdome and see what he does. But I do think when you start looking at value in some of this other stuff, and you look at him compared to other quarterbacks that have gone in the top 10, I'd be fake if I sat here and said it doesn't concern me a little bit, because we've been talking for 10 years about this team, and every time it's the value's got to be there. You got to love them. You got to do, trust your board, all that. It would be fake to throw that out. But
okay, let's talk about value. I'm not going to make this a Shedeur Sanders video because we've done enough of that this week. Talk about value, okay? Each position has inherent value, all right? We talked about that a little bit earlier with the cornerback position. Now, it's no surprise to anyone that quarterback is the highest value position. It's the highest wins above replacement or WAR for any position in the NFL. You have to factor that in if you're going to talk about value, because if you do hit on Shedeur or any quarterback in the top 10, Jackson Dart, whatever, if you do hit, the value you then receive is like 3x a different position. So that risk of Shedeur or a quarterback would trump a lower value position like guard or whatever. Real quick, like math problem would be, and Tyler Booker is not a 9th overall pick, but if you have someone like Tyler Booker and you hit on him, what is his value? What is the highest level of value? What is the highest level wins above replacement you believe a left guard can give you? And then you take Ashton Genty or Ted McMillan or Shedeur Sanders or Tyler Warren. Their maximum value is way higher. Way higher. If Tyler Booker is the number one guard in the NFL, but Ted McMillan is the number one receiver in the NFL, or Ashton Genty is the number one running back in the NFL, or Tyler Warren is the number one tight end in the NFL, or Shedeur Sanders is the number one quarterback in the NFL, the value difference is huge. Huge. So you have to factor that risk in when it comes to making a pick for someone like Shedeur, where if you believe, and again, a lot of this is the front office. Like we can sit here and talk about grades that I have on people or what I think about a player or whatever. At a certain point, you have to kick back and say, if Kellen Moore thinks this guy's grade, or if Brandon Staley thinks this guy's grade is blank, I have to trust that. Like if they don't have Shedeur ranked or graded that high, okay. If they don't have Ted McMillan ranked or graded that high, if they don't have blank player, if they don't have, all right, fine, sure. I mean, you got to kind of trust what they are doing, and a lot of this talk, there's a lot of this like hypothetical talk that we're doing, is predicated on what their grades are going to be. Like I keep saying all this stuff about, or we all do, about Tyler Warren. They may not be high on Tyler Warren. They may not think he has that high of like unrealized value. They might not think he's, whatever. And if that's the case, it's a moot point, because there's no way you take him at 9, right? You wait and take Mason Taylor or Gunnar Helm or whoever the hell else. So at a certain point, like all the rubber meets the road, where it really depends on those grades and what Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley, and the front office believe in all of these individual players.
Just as a fan of football, put him on the team and let's see what happens. Yeah. Yeah. Look, this is a team. I bought a Buff shirt last year. Like I was in on the hype.
You did. We were watching that Colorado State game, and yeah.
My Buffs, man. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, they were the most fun team to watch. I loved every moment of it, but I just don't see top 10 when I look at it. I see a quarterback in a weak class that is probably going to get drafted a little bit higher than he should. He needs some stuff around him to succeed. I think in 2025, if I'm drafting a quarterback, I want a guy that's, dynamic in a lot of different ways that plays outside of the pocket. Now he can make some plays on the run, but he isn't, taking off from running. There isn't a ton of juice in those legs. And I think you need that in 25 as a top 10 guy. You need that. Yeah, you can win playing from the pocket. Jared Goff does, but I just, you just want to see something where it's like, oh man, you take him in the top 10, he's taking you to the promised land. I feel like Shedeur's like, you get him in the top 10, maybe he can take you to the promised land. I just want a sure thing there. And I don't know if I see it all the way there, but
all right, we'll end it on this. I want to go back to the statistical, like the value or whatever. Look at a top 10 cornerback. All right, so look at like Isaiah Bolden, Marlon Humphrey, Miles Battle, Dwight McGlothern, Garrett Williams. Look at all these guys, okay? They are in the top 10 of their position. Okay. And then you think about, I'm in coverage grades. This is going to be a disaster. But then you look at quarterback. Okay. And you look at some of these guys in like the 20s, like Matt Stafford. You look at, some of these guys got hurt. Like I know Dak, I think, is kind of low because he got hurt. But you look at these guys, Sam Darnold last year, CJ Stroud, all right, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, whatever you think about Trevor Lawrence. Like I said, Matthew Stafford. Okay. You don't need the quarterback to reach like that incredibly high level to get the value. You can get, I've made this case plenty of times. I need to do like a minimum dropbacks here. Let's do that. I gotta get Marcus Mariota out of the list. But if you told me that Shedeur Sanders is Jared Goff, that's okay. Yeah, that's good enough. Good enough for a top 10. Like, look at these guys. Just replace Shedeur with any of these players. And the question to you is, where do you say, I don't think so. I think a majority of these guys are just production, because you got to take out the age, you got to take out the injuries, because Shedeur doesn't have any injuries. You can't predict injuries, and Shedeur isn't 30 years old. You just got to look at the production. Would you take Matthew Stafford's production in the top 10? Yes, for sure. You get Matthew Stafford's production in a 21-year-old on a rookie contract? Yes, absolutely. Jordan Love's got a lot of upside, played well last year, towards the end of last year. A lot of people would absolutely take him in the top 10. Okay? Bryce Young, even. Some people think, okay, he's turned a corner. Do you take the current version of Bryce Young, the current production rate of Bryce Young in the top 10? It's a question. I don't think I would. I think Bryce Young sucks. But CJ Stroud. I had someone in the comment section saying that you cannot take Shedeur because he's not going to be elite, and he has to be elite. CJ Stroud isn't elite. CJ Stroud's good. CJ Stroud has a lot of potential. He sure as hell isn't elite. Definitely not yet. But there is not a single person watching this video that wouldn't take him in the top 10 if he was in this draft, right? So you got to kind of rethink some of this stuff. Geno Smith, is he elite? Is he MVP? Is he even top 10? I don't know. But the value that Geno Smith brings to the field is like I would say at least 3-4 times what the top 10 cornerback, any of those guys that we just looked at, what they're bringing in their own value. So, and you can do the same thing with like Brock Bowers or Justin Jefferson, whoever you think is like at whatever position. Chris Jones. Like, you just look at those positions. The 6th best, edge rusher, the 6th best running back, the 6th best wide receiver is way more value than the 6th best safety or the 6th best cornerback. So I was hoping this would be like a 10-minute video. This has turned into a 30-minute TED Talk. I just wanted to talk about a different way or show y'all a different way to think about this and a different way to think about positions and value and what, like, risk and all of that, because that goes into this draft. It goes into the process, So, like, there is no one on earth that would take blank cornerback, however good you think the cornerback. Say the best cornerback in the NFL. Say Cooper DeJean. Would anybody here take Cooper DeJean over CJ Stroud? No. Hell no. No one would take. And Cooper DeJean is a rookie, or his second year, off of the best cornerback grade in the NFL. He's the best at his position as a rookie. And CJ Stroud is probably not even top 10. And 100% of people would take Stroud over Cooper DeJean building a team. And if this was a draft, because he plays quarterback. And you got to have that position. Bo Nix, who's certainly not top 10, probably not even top 15. I bet it would be split on if you take Bo Nix or Cooper DeJean, and I bet it's like 60-40, 65% would be on Bo Nix because he plays quarterback. And you absolutely have to factor that in for every position. Drake May. Would you rather have Drake May? If you could go back, would you draft Drake May or Cooper DeJean? Again, I bet it's like 65, 60% Drake May. One is the best player at his position as a rookie. One is probably not even top 20. All right. Get on down in the comments below. Good discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you in the next video.